In the 1930s, Martin decided that they would compete with Gibson and various other people and produce archtop guitars. So they made two ranges, the C range, which was archtop with a round hole, and the F, which was F-hole. The clues in the name there. And it's fair to say that the actual timbers that they used, the quality of workmanship, was all really fine, and they introduced some new bits of style at that point too, like this CF Martin down the middle of the headstock, which I always loved. But unfortunately, the guitars weren't very good because they didn't really think it through, and there were a lot of things about them that didn't work. However, this guitar is a pretty damn good example of what can be done to reclaim this. I mean, if I can just briefly tell the history of this guitar, because it's so storied. This guitar was found by a rag and bone man in probably 1971. I think the headstock was off, which is why the rag and bone man would have got it. But it was a C2, so it was a carved top round hole guitar, and it was sold to a man called Peter Sensier, who had the headstock repaired, and bought by a man called Mike Jott, who's been a professional guitar player since the early 60s. And he kept it as a C2 until 2003, and in 2003 he took it to the States and gave it to a man called TJ Thompson. Now, I've known TJ for a very long time, and he always wanted me to play one of his OMs or a vintage OM Martin. And as I said, he did years ago sent me one to try, which turned up. It was left by either UPS or FedEx on the front porch of my house in Trumansburg, New York, and just left there. And when I came home from my shopping, I think I've been doing, here was this guitar box which I opened, and he'd actually sent me a Martin OM45 Deluxe, which had been left by the shipping company on the deck. And that guitar now would be worth, well, I know of one that's insured for $1 million. So, but unfortunately, he didn't want me to have it. He just wanted me to be impressed by it. I think it was actually Eric Schoenberg's guitar, one of two that he had. So TJ, is a god. He can take a bag full of bits of Martin and give you a great guitar. And this guitar, he retopped. He did work on the neck. Replaced the bridge, obviously, because it had a floating bridge before. If you look at the guitar, you can see, screw holes where the tailpiece was, and screw holes where the scratch plate was. But what he did was he put an Adirondack top on it, beautiful Adirondack top, which he braced and built. And that's 20 years ago now that happened, and it is an extraordinary articulate. It's articulate like the modern guitars are articulate. And interestingly, because it's built on their attempt at an archtop guitar, the back has a bit more arch in it, and I think that makes it project in a different way. So it's a great guitar. A really great guitar, and because TJ did the work on it, if a lot of This guitar basically is a Brazilian rosewood guitar from 1936. Had it not been a rebuild, I definitely wouldn't have been able to afford to own it. The fact that it has been rebuilt, not only does it mean I could afford to own it, but it also means that it intonates brilliantly, which many 30s Martins, they need a lot of work to make them play as in tune as this one is. I think it's good to use different instruments, and to have that. Yeah. What just happened then, which almost took away my power of speech, was the fact that I put this into Dadgad for you to play, and I thought, right, I'll move it out of Dadgad. So I dropped the A down to G, dropped the D down to C, and now it's put me in a tuning which I actually haven't used for ages, but be a really good idea, I think, to if I just tell you what the thought process is, right? So what I have now is a G tuning. So I've got the power chord there. The central to all the tunings that I use is root fifth root. And then there's another interval. So if, typically somebody might play G major tuning, but I haven't done that. I've left the second string tuned down to A. So what this tuning is basically a suspended second. And it's great.
I love how that suspended second just opens things out a little bit. There's a few more possibilities there than if you'd gone like straight back.
And if you then take it up, so you've now got two C's in the tuning. So it's C, but G, D, G, C, D. This is a banjo tuning. So that's an old banjo fill from a version of the Cuckoo Bird, and it's got the C in the bass. So what this is basically the G equivalent of Dadgad. Root fifth, root fourth, fifth. But I put the fourth in the bass.
Yeah, I think I've heard you use that tuning on a couple of things.
A lot. So, an English guitar. This is made by Rosie Haydenrych down in Surrey. One of the things that Rosie does is she uses native British timbers. So this is sycamore. Spalted beech. This guitar actually this is bog oak, which is 4,000 or 5,000 years old, the binding, and this actually is not native. It's reclaimed mahogany, but it's just exquisite timber. And all these people, the way they use wood, I think is just exemplary. And I mean, we didn't talk about the wood in the Martin, but the Brazilian rosewood back and sides on that, you can see the mill marks, which are basically big saw marks that have almost been removed, but not quite. This is a smaller guitar. It's articulate. It's articulate, has fantastic sustain. It's also very percussive. It's just, this is a beautiful guitar. Her attention to detail, her woodworking skills. I mean, you look at that line there, it's a work of art. If you look at the way that she's made the heel give you better access to the cutaway, you know, she's such a brilliant builder, really is.
There's real music in that guitar, isn't there? I mean, there is in all of them, but I mean, actually, just, you know, it's a real pleasure to sit in front of this succession of instruments, because they are slightly different. The emphasis is slightly different in each case, but there's a common kind of quality to all of them, as you described so well earlier on. And actually another thing which I would say, dynamic range, which is, I guess, you know, well, basically what you're talking about.
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
Dynamic range in a guitar is so important. I think that I first realised that playing sow bells, you know, you can hit a sow bell and keep hitting it harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, and it will not overload. Whereas, you know, crucially underbuilt guitars, if you like, the reason that the Meidemann and the Taran and this guitar work as well as they do is that they do have light aspects to their construction, but they also have a real sense of solidity and strength to them, which means you can really get the dynamics out of them.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that like you say, they all retain their composure as you sort of dig in.
Yeah. They don't, you know, they don't complain.
Just a quick question to round things out. Do you put the same strings on all of them? Do you use different gauges, different makes, or do you?
I don't use different makes. I have to say that I've used D'Addarios forever and ever and ever. And D'Addario are kind of like the guitar builders, you know. They have a brilliant attitude to making, okay, let's make this string better. Let's change this and see if it makes the string better. And they, as far as I'm concerned, they succeed. They're very, very good. I've never had a bum D'Addario string. I've never taken a wound string, put it on a guitar and gone, ooh. Whereas I have actually had that happen with other brands of strings where, you know, you put a set on and you go, whoa, that string doesn't work, you know. And that's alarming. You don't want that. Gauges.
Yeah.
Of course you want to know about string gauges. I actually did toy with the idea of having a card made that just said D'Addario and the gauges on it, so that when people ask,
Yes, exactly.
hand them. I have experimented a lot in recent years. I used to use medium gauge strings and put a 15 on the top. And this is on Sobels, you know, like, which is a long scale, it's longer than the usual scale. So really, 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 you know, a lot of tension there. And then I started to go, oh, wait a minute, is this entirely necessary? It's very macho, but does it? Do I need to do it? And I've actually got to the point now where I am mostly what I'm using is a set which is, that and these are mediums and these are lights. So it's a 56, 42, 32, 24, 17, 13. And it just works.
Are they coated or uncoated?
Coated.
Coated, yeah.
I actually have used coated strings for so long now. If I use uncoated strings, they feel like barbed wire because there isn't just that slight lube effect. Also, I think they're very quiet. You know, squeaking. People, I used to teach people a lot. Why is it squeaking? Well, but these they don't really squeak, except in a very musical way, I think.
Well, Martin, thanks so much for showing us these beautiful guitars and playing some lovely music on them. It's a pleasure as always, and thanks very much.
Pleasure.